Much, Shailesh, for having joined this conversation, what we call the alternate universe. And one of the reasons why we call it the alternate universe series is because it appears that all the questions that many of us are facing can't actually be answered by the existing universe. The crisis at many, many levels, the crisis at the level of the human being, the health, the people, business, supply chain, uh, economy as a whole. So the crisis at many, many, many levels. And I think the second point is that to some extent is unprecedented. Nobody is able to point to a time in history when, we faced something similar. And because it's unprecedented, the third part, which is that we are a little bit in a dark tunnel, Shailesh, and that's where we look up to you and folks like you um, to a little bit light a torch in this dark tunnel and show us a little bit of what the future is likely to bring.
Fairly aligned, Deepak. I must confess, um, I mean, we are a large enterprise, and uh, we are generally being a long cycle business. Insurance is a long cycle business, and we have significant funds, assets under management from customers, which we are custodians of, and therefore we are extra diligent, extra careful than probably most sectors. But in spite of that inherent in how we operate, I don't think anyone saw what we are facing right now. Truly unprecedented in that sense. So completely agree with you. We all began to smell this from a distance a few weeks back, but when it hit us, it is only then that we realized how big and how different and how unique it is. Number one, truly, it's movie kind of stuff that we are experiencing. Second, I must share with you that a few days back, must be probably about a couple of weeks back, 10 days back, I was telling my son in a different context when he said, I'll prefer doing things in a certain way. And I told him, listen, I mean, he's 26 years old. And I told him, you haven't really seen life enough. So, it's always good to keep one's mind open, ears open, and be open to, what's coming and stay flexible. But frankly, what we are encountering now, I don't think I had envisaged. While I was telling him that, I think now when I look back and reflect, it's truly profound what we are really facing right now. Unprecedented, unforeseen, uncharted territory. But like every such situation, I think it also has an opportunity, a way, probably to look afresh at things and restart in many ways.
Yeah, and look at quite a few things afresh, Shailesh. I can imagine. So, like I said, interesting times we live in, isn't it? So we all, in the last few years, I think the catchword that all of us used to talk about in workshops was VUCA word. Preparing for the VUCA
Right.
word. Well, guess what? It's here. It's here. It can't get more VUCA than this,
Absolutely.
and we all find ourselves kind of a little bit struggling. So, Shailesh, so as you look out 12 to 18 months from now, what do you actually see happening in the business? Right? Can you just, so to speak, uh, light that torch in that tunnel, if I may say?
If I look at the country level trends, national level, I think the impact on the poorest sections, I think, is probably the biggest. And therefore, I expect that the government spending, subsidies, etc., will go up. Government will do all it can, and rightly so, now and in the coming times, and therefore, government will borrow. The economy was facing some headwinds and challenges. I expect that to be further challenged, and therefore interest rates, inflation, some of those will emerge out of this in the next 12 to 18 months that we will all have to encounter and manage, all businesses, all individuals. I think that's one at the national level, very prominent, I think, and dominant theme that will emerge. Second, I think growth is it will certainly be a casualty. We were hearing different versions of growth, different numbers. I don't think there'll be any dispute in the fact that growth will be significantly impacted globally as well as in India, which will mean lower business margins, which will mean the revenue top lines will be under pressure. there will be bigger impact on longer cycle business in particular. You mentioned some of them. I think, airlines, for example. I think real estate, auto, all that requires large capital investment. Auto, theaters. I mean, those are really going to take quite some time to come back. They will also be impacted by the fact that some of these will be seen as discretionary spends by consumers, and therefore they will minimize some of these, and that doesn't help the situation right now. So over the next 12 to 18 months, I think there will be significant impact on these. Of course, the others will be impacted as well, but significant on some of these. I expect banks to be impacted, and because of the quality of portfolio lending, some of those will be, the paying capacity will be under pressure, and it will have its own implications on NPAs, etc. So some of those will be under pressure. Travel will be impacted for sure. Infra spends, I think, will come under pressure from the government, and for all other businesses, I think there will be a need and a desire to lower costs and spends across. In some cases, it will impact salaries, jobs, bonuses. In some, it just may be, moderate, impact, but there will be a desire to manage costs and spends much better than how we have managed before. The world will not be the same for the next at least, couple of years. There will be a big push, I think, for driving business efficiencies across customer process, employee processes, organization, enterprise deliveries, all of those. There'll be a desire to do more with less.
What happened to the golden word called globalization? We lived on that for almost a century, a world that was more connected, businesses that were more interconnected. Like I say, your supply chain, your backend is sitting in China, your design house is sitting in Italy, your manufacturing partly in this country, supply chain rationalization. Over the years, we have pushed our businesses to become more integrated, take advantages. The world became smaller, right? So the borderless world, Kenichi Ohame, the world is flat, Friedman, pushing corporates into an interconnected kind of reality, right? So how is that perspective likely to change today? I see, people talking about this death of distance, as somebody in McKinsey said the other day, death of distance.
I see a short-term impact, Deepak. Longer term, I don't see a very significant shift, but short term I do see. I think more recently with President Trump flexing his muscles, as well as China, engaging with him that already had begun to happen, and then Brexit. So there were those trends anyway of handle your own, protect your own. So some of those, unlike President Obama days, where I think globalization clearly was a very dominant theme. I think of late, over the last couple of years, I think countries had begun to protect their own interest a lot more through a variety of mechanisms. But I must state at the same time that the world, fortunately, I think has now reached a stage where there is so much of interconnectedness that has happened. We are so much dependent on each other, whether it is looking for markets from each other, or for supplies and sourcing, or for technology, that I think it's difficult to really work with that model for long. So I expect
to roll that back.
Yes, after some time, I expect, it could take probably a year, 18 months, but after that, I expect that to re-emerge as a dominant theme. Also, in times of crisis, I think, there is this G20 meeting, and at the SAARC level, the Prime Minister has taken initiative. Some of these, pooling of resources, pooling of heads, strategies to grapple with a crisis of this magnitude is also a good strategy, rather than fighting it alone. So I guess after the initial hiccups, it will come back to the rails, and will continue.
Wonderful. That's good to hear. So Shailesh, I mean, let's assume magically that this problem is behind us, right? And we're all back at work in the way that we used to work in an office building or whatever it is, right? So the CEO is there and the leadership team is there, and we all kind of huddle together. So day one of that, what's the CEO and the leadership team kind of talking about? And how are they prioritizing themselves? And like you just used the word, the new normal. So what's the new normal?
I really wish what you're saying comes to be true sooner than later. But I must confess that in the coming weeks, we all will inch towards normalcy. There is absolutely no doubt about it. And human beings are winners, and we will and overcome this as well. But in the near future, there won't be a one day where everything is returned to normal very quickly. I think I see normalcy returning in parts and pieces, and it will be gradual. And therefore, I think there will be some very clear themes that all enterprises, including ours, that we are deploying, and uh, that would be my advice as well. I think, first and foremost, today and even tomorrow, for significant time to come, I think protecting and safekeeping employees will remain a priority. Second, I think achieving business continuity. I think everyone is desperate. We want the workplace humming with our customers. We want employees, running around between different floors. We want cross-functional teams to get back to life, and therefore, staying close to customers, employees, in achieving this new normal, all this while through different means, digitally or in person if possible, without jeopardizing protecting safekeeping of employees and health of employees, I think will be a desire that all companies will have. I expect that a lot of learnings will get deployed very quickly, so it won't be rising from the ground. I think uh, once this crisis, this infection COVID-19 is sorted, I expect that the recovery will be very, very fast. But first, the crisis has to be put to bed for the new normal to really stabilize.
That's great, Shailesh. Come to uh, just that kind of leads off to the other part, which is the whole issue of people and culture. There's so much which is being talked about. To some extent, this is a crisis of people, right? Because the fact that they cannot anymore engage with work as we knew it is the one quick definition of the crisis that we are kind of facing. Uh, and and uh, uh, and at various levels, you see activity happening, right? So job losses, organizations announcing wage cuts, force majeure won't pay vendors, not sure how to deal with the performance management of 1st April. Maybe should push that out by a couple of quarters. Uh, uh, let's not even talk about the unorganized sector where the impact is so direct and so uh, difficult to kind of comprehend. So what's your view about where this is headed?
I actually see three distinct pieces to how most enterprises are handling, including us. The first being, keeping the lights on. You really want to ensure minimal disruption while there will be disruption, but you want customers when they call, you want the calls to be picked up. They want details of their policies. You want to service those policies and so on. Second is, there are business challenges that have emanated out of this whole crisis, COVID-19, and that has different shades, and those different shades include process efficiencies. They require reskilling. They will have redundancies. They looking at all hiring, is it needed, not needed, and so on. But to enable these first two buckets of issues, uh, there is this third bucket, which is what you just referred to, which is the people power, uh, which is about engaging and inspiring in times like these. And that is where we are really put to test. Organizations like ours, which have really invested in this over years. I think I'm happy to share that it helps us so much in times like these, when people come together, when people trust that the organization cares for them. So our values are caring, collaboration, customer obsession, and therefore we go back to our values and culture, and we empower leaders. We tell them, you do not have to come to senior most levels for decisions in times like these. You make the decision. You do what is appropriate for the customer and for your team at that point of time, empowered. You have to buy some digital tools, do it. You have to tell your people, and we started fairly early work from home compared to other companies. But if we have to do that, we do that ahead of time. And we allowed our leaders to make that call. These are strengths that we have demonstrated. And in times like these, they are getting tested. And we have confidence that we came out winners earlier, and we will succeed and overcome this time again.
This is very powerful. And I think the message that I take away for many others out of what you just said is that a very powerful way of dealing with this crisis is actually empowering people to be able to perform and to be able to deal with things as they see them, right? So I'm guessing that in some other organization, it might be a question of saying, let us actually take control into the hands of leadership, because right now we are at war, and so we need more generals to kind of run this army. What I hear from you is a little different from that. What I hear from you is that let's build empowerment in the organization and build trust so that we can partner with our people to actually walk through this whole situation to the other side. And that's, I
Yes.
think, what is truly unique
And
about this story.
absolutely. And Deepak, I must say, we are very cognizant of the fact that, however knowledgeable we may be, when a crisis of this proportion of that, hits us, in spite of whatever planning we may have done, there will be deficiencies, and there will be last mile issues and last minute issues that keep evolving and changing, and we cannot handle that from the center. So we really believe in a very decentralized model. We want all hands on deck in hours like these. We want everyone to be trusting each other and make calls. If it involves some financial commitments, we empower people. If it involves some decision making, we empower. It's okay to go back post facto and update and align leadership teams wherever needed, but make those calls because we won't have the time. We don't want our people impacted, we don't want our customers impacted, and therefore we truly believe in decentralizing and empowering people. And culture helps beautifully there, because people trust each other, and we know they're doing it with good intent, and we stand behind them and support them in that hour.
Thank you very much, Shailesh. I think that's a very powerful advice to the heads of HR, to heads of organizations, that this is a great way of navigating through this crisis, still holding on to your purpose, still holding on to your values, and actually leveraging those to go through the high seas at this point in time. Shailesh, I look forward to seeing you at the other end of this when whatever you call the new normal emerges, and in whatever way the new reality emerges. I look forward to seeing you at the other end. And thanks so much for your time. Thank you so much, Shailesh.
Thank you so much, Deepak.